She told me I wasn't invited to my own mother's funeral because it wasn't the right aesthetic for the family photos. I paid for the casket, the flowers, the reception hall, everything. But when they locked the church doors, I wasn't inside. So I made one call that changed everything. Subscribe if this story finds you, and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? The rain came down in sheets that Thursday morning, the kind of rain that turns everything gray and makes the world feel smaller, colder. I stood outside St. Michael's Episcopal Church with my umbrella fighting the wind, watching people file past me like I was invisible. My sister Diane walked by first, her black Chanel suit pristine, her heels clicking against the wet stone steps. She didn't look at me. Then came my brother Robert with his wife Susan, their teenage kids trailing behind in expensive mourning clothes I knew I'd probably paid for at some point over the years. They didn't look at me either. I watched my own family walk into my mother's funeral while I stood on the sidewalk like a stranger. The church coordinator, a thin woman named Patricia with kind eyes and an apologetic smile, had met me at the bottom of the steps 20 minutes earlier. Her umbrella was floral print, cheerful in a way that felt obscene. "Mrs. Harrison," she'd said quietly, her voice nearly drowned out by the rain, "I'm so sorry, but there's been a situation." I remember staring at her, my mind blank, unable to process what she was trying to tell me. "Your sister called this morning. She said the family has decided to keep the service intimate, immediate family only." "I am immediate family," I said slowly. "I'm her daughter." Patricia's face crumpled with sympathy. "I know. I'm so sorry. I told her that, but she was very firm. She said you'd understand. She said there had been some tensions lately, and that having you there would be disruptive." Disruptive. The word hung in the air between us like something rotten. I had paid for this funeral. Every single detail. The mahogany casket with the silk lining, $8,000. The floral arrangements that lined the altar, $3,200. The organist, the programs, the reception hall rental, the catering for 150 people. All of it came out of my account because Diane said she couldn't possibly manage the logistics right now, and Robert claimed his business was going through a rough patch. I had written the checks without hesitation because she was my mother. Because that's what you do. And now I wasn't allowed inside. "I can't let you in," Patricia whispered, her eyes wet. "I'm so sorry. Your sister was very clear. She said if you tried to attend, she would cancel the entire service." I looked up at the church doors, heavy oak carved with crosses and vines. Behind them, my mother lay in a casket I'd chosen, surrounded by flowers I'd picked, about to be eulogized by people who'd convinced themselves I didn't deserve to be there. "Did she say why?" I asked quietly. Patricia hesitated. "She mentioned something about you trying to control everything, about you making the planning process difficult. She said you were overbearing." Overbearing. I had made exactly 3 requests during the planning. That Mom's favorite hymn be included, that the program mention her love of gardening, and that I be allowed to say a few words during the service. Diane had vetoed all 3. "We're keeping it simple, Catherine. Not everyone needs a speaking slot. This isn't about you." I stood there in the rain, my black dress already soaked through, my hair plastered to my face. I could hear the organ starting inside, the low, mournful notes of a hymn I didn't recognize, not Mom's favorite, something Diane had chosen. People were still arriving, rushing past me with their umbrellas and their sympathetic faces. A few I recognized, Mom's bridge club friends, the neighbors from her street, distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. None of them stopped. None of them questioned why I was standing outside. Then I saw him, James Mitchell, Mom's attorney. A tall man with silver hair and a kind face, someone I'd met a handful of times over the years at holiday dinners. He was hurrying up the steps when he spotted me. He stopped, looked at me standing there in the rain, looked at the church doors. His face registered confusion, then something darker. "Catherine?" He walked back down the steps toward me. "What are you doing out here?" "I'm not invited," I said simply. His eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean you're not invited? You're her daughter." "Diane says I'm disruptive." James's jaw tightened. He looked back at the church, then at me again. "This is absurd. Come on, I'll walk you in." "She'll cancel the service," I said. "She threatened to cancel the whole thing if I showed up." He stood there for a long moment, rain drumming against his umbrella. Then he shook his head slowly. "Catherine, there's something you need to know, something I should have told you weeks ago, but your mother made me promise to wait until after the funeral." My heart started beating faster. "What are you talking about?" "Not here." He glanced around at the people still arriving. "Meet me at my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. There are things about your mother's estate, about your family, that you need to understand." "Tell me now." "Tomorrow," he said firmly. "Trust me, you'll want to be sitting down for this." Then he squeezed my shoulder gently and walked up the steps into the church, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I didn't go home after that. I couldn't. The thought of sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the walls while my mother was being buried without me, felt unbearable. Instead, I drove. I drove through the rain, past the cemetery where they'd be lowering her into the ground in a few hours, past the elementary school where I'd learned to read, past the house where I grew up, the house Mom had sold 3 years ago to move into the assisted living facility where she'd spent her final years. I ended up at Rosie's Diner, a little 24-hour place on the edge of town. I sat in a booth by the window, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and stared at my phone. The messages had started coming in around the time the service would have ended. "Diane, I hope you understand why we had to do this. It's better for everyone." "Robert, sorry sis. Diane said it was for the best. You know how she gets." "Aunt Linda, heard you couldn't make it today. Hope everything's okay?" "Couldn't make it. Like I'd had a scheduling conflict. Like I'd chosen not to be there." I turned my phone face down on the table. The waitress, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a name tag that said Marlene, refilled my coffee without asking. "You okay, honey?" she asked gently. I looked up at her, this stranger with her coffee pot and her concerned expression, and something inside me cracked. "My family just locked me out of my mother's funeral," I said. My voice sounded hollow, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Marlene set the coffee pot down and slid into the booth across from me. The hell they did! And then I told her everything. The bills I'd paid, the calls I'd ignored, the years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who showed up and wrote checks and fixed problems while Diane and Robert lived their perfect suburban lives and treated me like hired help. Marlene listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I had a sister like that," she said quietly. "Took me 40 years to figure out I didn't owe her a damn thing just because we shared a bloodline. Best day of my life was when I finally cut her off." "I don't know how to do that," I admitted. "You'll figure it out." She stood up, picked up her coffee pot. "But honey, if they're treating you like this now, over a funeral, just wait until they find out what's in that will." She walked away before I could ask what she meant. I went home eventually, sat on my couch in my wet funeral clothes, and stared at the blank TV screen until the sun went down. Around 8 p.m., my phone rang. Diane. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. On the 4th call, I answered. "What?" "Catherine, finally." Her voice was sharp, irritated. "We need to talk about the reception costs. The caterer is saying you didn't pay the full amount." I sat up slowly. "What?" "The caterer. You only paid half the deposit. They're threatening not to deliver the food tomorrow for the post-funeral brunch unless we pay the rest. I know you're upset about today, but this is really unprofessional." "I paid in full," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I have the receipt. I paid every penny 2 weeks ago. There was a pause. Well, they're saying they never received the second payment. Then someone canceled it. Another pause, longer this time. Why would someone cancel it? I don't know, Diane. Why would someone lock their sister out of their mother's funeral? Silence. Catherine, if you canceled that payment out of spite. I didn't cancel anything, I said. But something in me stirred. Something dark and tired and done with all of it. But you know what? I should have. Excuse me? I should have canceled everything. The flowers, the church, the casket, all of it. Since apparently I'm too disruptive to actually attend the funeral I funded. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Tell me, Diane, what exactly was so disruptive about my presence? What did I do that was so terrible you had to ban me from saying goodbye to my own mother? You tried to take over the planning. You kept insisting on things that weren't appropriate. I asked to include her favorite hymn. She had lots of favorite hymns. I asked that the program mention her garden. It would have cluttered the layout. I asked to speak at her service. And I told you we were keeping it simple. My hand tightened around the phone. No. You told me I wasn't important enough to be included. You told me that for once you wanted to be in charge. You wanted everyone to see you as the devoted daughter who planned this beautiful service. And you couldn't do that if I was there, reminding everyone who actually paid for it. I could hear her breathing on the other end, sharp and angry. Fix your caterer problem yourself, I said quietly. You wanted to be in charge? Congratulations. You're in charge. I hung up. And then, with hands that were completely steady for the first time all day, I opened my banking app and started scrolling through my recent transactions. The numbers were staggering when I saw them all together. Funeral home, $15,000. Flowers, $3,200. Church fee, $800. Organist, $400. Programs, $250. Reception hall, $2,500. Catering, $4,800. Plus the assisted living facility bills I'd been covering for the last 8 months after Robert's rough patch meant he couldn't contribute anymore. Plus the medical bills from Mom's final hospitalization that somehow never got submitted to insurance properly. Plus the small personal loans I'd given Diane over the years that were never repaid, for her kitchen renovation, her daughter's orthodontics, her son's summer camp. I opened a spreadsheet, started documenting everything, every check, every transfer, every Venmo payment I'd made to either of them over the last 5 years. The total came to $127,000. $127,000 I had given to my family, expecting nothing in return except basic decency, basic respect, basic acknowledgement that I existed. Instead, I got locked out of a funeral. I saved the spreadsheet, titled it Family Contributions. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and waited for tomorrow's meeting with James Mitchell. His office was in an old brick building downtown, the kind with creaky wooden floors and tall windows that let in too much light. I sat in the waiting room staring at a faded landscape painting, trying not to let my mind spiral into what-ifs. At exactly 9 a.m., his assistant, a young man with neat hair and a kind smile, led me back. James stood when I entered, came around his desk to shake my hand. Catherine, thank you for coming. You said I needed to sit down for this, I said, lowering myself into the leather chair across from his desk. I'm sitting. He returned to his seat, pulled out a thick folder, and set it in front of him. For a long moment, he just looked at it, his expression troubled. Your mother updated her will 6 months ago, he said finally. She came to me specifically without telling anyone else in the family. What she told me, what she asked me to do, I'll be honest, Catherine, I tried to talk her out of it. I thought she was being too harsh, but she was adamant. My stomach tightened. What did she do? James opened the folder and pulled out a document. She left everything to you. The house sale proceeds, her savings, her life insurance policy, her investment accounts, all of it. Approximately $890,000. I stared at him. What? Diane and Robert are getting nothing. She specifically wrote them out of the will, and she left explicit instructions about why. He slid a handwritten letter across the desk. Mom's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. To my daughter Catherine. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I imagine your brother and sister have already shown you exactly who they are. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it, but I'm not surprised. I've watched for years how they treat you. Like an ATM. Like a servant. Like someone who exists only to solve their problems and fund their lives. I've watched you give and give and give, and I've watched them take without ever once saying thank you. I enabled this. I'm ashamed to say I enabled it for far too long. I told myself it was easier to let them be who they are, to let you be the strong one, the reliable one. But the truth is, I was a coward. I should have stood up for you. I should have made them see you the way I see you. This is my apology. This is my way of finally putting you first. Everything I have is yours. Not because you're the favorite, though God knows you should be, but because you're the only one who loved me without expecting anything in return. You're the only one who showed up. You're the only one who cared. Let them rage, let them demand, let them play the victim. You owe them nothing. Take this money and build the life you deserve. Travel, rest, stop carrying the weight of people who never appreciated it. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't say it enough. Mom. I couldn't breathe. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I read it again, then a third time, her voice echoing in my head. She made me promise not to tell you until after the funeral, James said quietly. She said she didn't want you to have to deal with their reaction while you were still grieving. She knew they'd make it ugly. They locked me out, I whispered. They locked me out of her funeral. I know, and I'm sorrier than I can say that I didn't stop them. He leaned forward. Catherine, they don't know yet. About the will. They're expecting a reading next week. They think everything will be split 3 ways, the way your father's estate was. I looked up at him. When are you telling them? Monday. I've scheduled a formal reading, but I wanted you to know first. I wanted you to be prepared. Prepared, as if there was any way to prepare for the nuclear bomb this would drop into my family. What do? I asked. Whatever you want, he said simply. The money is yours. Legally, ethically, morally, it's yours. They can contest the will if they want, but your mother was of sound mind and the documentation is ironclad. They won't win. I sat there for a long moment, that letter in my hands, my mother's words sinking into my bones. You owe them nothing. I didn't tell anyone. Not that weekend. Not Sunday night when Diane called 3 more times demanding I stop being petty and talk to her like an adult. I went to work on Monday. Taught my classes. I'm a high school English teacher, a fact my family has always treated as vaguely embarrassing, as if choosing a career I love instead of one that makes 6 figures is somehow shameful. My students were sweet. You okay, Miss Harrison? Asked Emma, one of my juniors after class. You seem sad. I'm okay, I told her. Just missing someone. She nodded solemnly. My grandma died last year. It gets easier, sort of. I managed to smile. Thank you, Emma. At 3 p.m., I got the first call from Diane. I was in my car, about to drive home, when my phone lit up. I let it ring. Then a text came through. Diane, we need to talk. Now, call me. Then Robert. Robert. What the hell did you do? Then Diane again, a voice message this time. Her voice was shaking with rage. Catherine, I don't know what you said to James Mitchell, but he just told us that Mom left everything to you. Everything. He said she wrote us out of the will completely. This is insane. This is illegal. I don't know what kind of manipulation you pulled, but I swear to God, if you don't fix this... The message cut off. Another one came immediately. You're a selfish, manipulative, disgusting person. After everything we've been through, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By stealing our inheritance? Mom would be ashamed of you. I sat there in my car, listening to her voice crack with fury, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, no urge to fix it. Just a strange, quiet calm. I deleted the messages without responding. They showed up at my apartment that night. I was making dinner, just pasta, something simple, when the buzzer rang. I checked the video intercom. Diane and Robert stood in the lobby, both of them looking furious. I didn't buzz them up. The buzzer rang again and again. Then my phone started ringing. Diane, Robert, Diane again. I turned my phone on silent and went back to my pasta. 30 minutes later, there was pounding on my door. Somehow they'd gotten into the building, probably caught the door when another tenant was leaving. "Catherine!" Diane's voice was muffled through the door. "Open up! We know you're in there!" I stood in my kitchen, listening to them bang and shout. "This is ridiculous!" Robert yelled. "You can't just ignore us." "We're your family," Diane added. "You owe us a conversation." I walked to the door calmly, pressed the button on my Ring camera so I could see them clearly. Diane's face was red, mascara smudged. Robert looked exhausted. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged, just a crack so they could see me. "Leave," I said quietly. "We need to talk about the will," Diane said, trying to sound reasonable now, though her voice was strained. Mom clearly wasn't thinking straight at the end. "We can contest this." "Leave." "Catherine, be reasonable." "You locked me out of her funeral," I said, my voice flat and cold. "You told me I was disruptive. You made me stand outside in the rain while you buried our mother with money I paid for, and now you want to be reasonable?" "That was a mistake," Robert said quickly. We thought... "I don't care what you thought. Leave." "The will is wrong," Diane insisted. "Mom would never do this. She loved all of us equally." "Read the letter she left," I interrupted. "James has it. Read what she actually thought of you, of how you treated me, of how you treated her." Diane's face went white. "What letter?" "The one where she explains exactly why she left you nothing. The one where she apologizes to me for enabling your behavior for years. That letter." Robert's jaw dropped. "You manipulated her. You poisoned her against us." "I didn't have to," I said. "You did that yourselves. Every time you treated me like an ATM. Every time you asked for money and never paid it back. Every time you expected me to solve your problems and never once said thank you. Mom saw all of it, and she made her choice." "This isn't over," Diane hissed. "We'll fight this. We'll take you to court." "Go ahead," I said calmly. She was of sound mind. "The will is legal. You'll lose, and you'll waste money you don't have on lawyers. But if that's how you want to spend your time, be my guest." I started to close the door. "You're going to regret this," Diane shouted. "When you're old and alone with no family, you're going to regret this." I paused, looked at her through the crack in the door. "I already have no family," I said quietly. "You made sure of that at the funeral." Then I closed the door, locked it, and went back to my pasta. Behind me, I could hear them shouting, pounding, making threats. I turned on music to drown them out. Eventually, they left. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and a string of texts I didn't bother reading. I blocked both their numbers, made myself coffee, and sat on my balcony watching the sunrise. The money felt surreal. Nearly $1 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to change everything. But the money wasn't what made me feel free. It was the permission. Mom's letter giving me permission to finally stop carrying them. "You owe them nothing." I called James that morning. "I want to make a few things very clear," I said. "If they contest the will, I fight. If they harass me, I get a restraining order. If they try to claim I manipulated Mom, I want every piece of documentation showing their financial dependence on me for the last 5 years." "Done," James said immediately. "Catherine, for what it's worth, your mother would be proud of you." "I hope so," I said. That afternoon, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I opened a new bank account, one they'd never had access to, never knew existed. I transferred the inheritance into it. Then I sat down and wrote my own letter. To Diane and Robert, you won't receive this for a while. I'm leaving it with James to give you after the dust settles, whenever that might be. I don't hate you. I want you to know that. I'm not doing this out of revenge or spite. I'm doing this because I finally understand something Mom tried to teach me too late. Love is not the same as obligation. For years I convinced myself that family meant showing up no matter what. That it meant giving endlessly, forgiving constantly, carrying the weight even when it crushed me. I thought that's what made me a good daughter, a good sister. But you taught me something else. You taught me that not everyone deserves unconditional access to your life. That generosity without gratitude becomes exploitation. That silence in the face of disrespect becomes complicity in your own erasure. You locked me out of Mom's funeral. You made me pay for everything, and then told me I wasn't welcome to attend. And in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift you could have. You freed me from the obligation of pretending we're a family. Mom saw it. She saw how you treated me, how you used me, how you never once looked at me as a person instead of a resource. And she made sure I knew she saw it. She made sure I knew I deserved better. I'm not fighting with you. I'm not engaging with your anger or your guilt trips or your attempts to rewrite history. I'm simply stepping out of a dynamic that has hurt me for far too long. The money is mine. Mom wanted me to have it. She said so explicitly. If you want to contest that in court, go ahead. But you should know, I have 5 years of financial records showing every dollar I gave you, every loan you never repaid, every bill I covered, every crisis I solved while you lived your lives and treated me like I owed you something. I hope someday you'll understand. I hope someday you'll see that this wasn't about the money. It was about respect. It was about being seen. It was about being valued as more than a checkbook. But whether you understand or not, I'm done explaining myself. I'm done. Catherine. I gave the letter to James. Hold on to this, I said. Give it to them if they ever stop being angry long enough to actually listen. What if they don't? He asked. Then keep it, I said. Maybe someday they'll be ready. I quit my teaching job 3 months later. Not because I didn't love it. I did. But because I finally could. Because for the first time in my life, I had the freedom to do something I'd always dreamed of, but never thought possible. I bought a small cottage in Vermont. 3 bedrooms, big windows, a garden out back. It needed work, but it was mine. Fully, completely mine. I spent the summer renovating, painting walls butter yellow and sage green, installing bookshelves in every room, planting tomatoes and herbs and flowers whose names I had to look up online. I made friends with my neighbors, an older couple, Helen and Tom, who brought me fresh eggs and helped me fix my fence. A woman my age named Adrienne who taught yoga and invited me to her classes. I started writing. Not anything serious, just memories, thoughts, the story of what happened. It felt good to get it out, to see it on paper, to name what had been done to me and acknowledge that it was real. In October, I got an email from Robert. Subject line, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Catherine, I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve a response, but I need to say it anyway. You were right about all of it. Diane and I have been fighting for months. About the will, about you, about Mom. She still thinks you manipulated everything. But I've been going through old records, old emails, old bank statements. I've been adding up everything you gave us over the years. $127,000. That's what I came up with. More than $100,000 you gave us, and I never once said thank you. I never once thought about what it cost you. I just took. We both did. I stood by while Diane locked you out of the funeral. I told myself it was easier not to fight her, that you'd understand, that it wasn't that big of a deal. But it was. It was cruel. And I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want me in your life. I just needed you to know that I finally see it. I finally understand what we did to you. I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Robert, I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk through the woods behind my house, the leaves crunching under my feet, the air crisp and clean. When I got back, I wrote a response. Short, simple. Robert, thank you for the apology. It means more than you know. I'm okay. I'm happy. I hope someday you are too. Take care of yourself. Catherine. I never heard from Diane. A year after Mom died, I hosted my first Thanksgiving in the cottage. Not a big affair, just Helen and Tom, Adrian and her partner, a couple of other friends I'd made. 8 of us crowded around my dining table, laughing and passing dishes and telling stories. At one point, Adrian raised her glass. To Catherine, she said, for opening her home and her heart, for building something beautiful out of something hard. Everyone clinked glasses. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were good tears. To second chances, I said quietly, and chosen family. We ate until we couldn't move. We played board games until midnight. And when everyone finally left, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes, looking out at the dark garden, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. I still missed Mom, still felt the ache of what my siblings had done, but the presence of something else. Contentment, rightness, the knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I dried my hands, turned off the lights, and walked upstairs to bed. In the morning, I'd wake up to sunlight and birdsong. I'd make coffee and read on the porch. I'd work in the garden, or write, or maybe just sit and do nothing. Because for the first time in my life, my time was my own, my space was my own, my life was my own, and no one, not Diane, not Robert, not anyone could take that away from me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I wish things had turned out differently, if I miss my family. The truth is complicated. I miss the family I thought I had. The version where we were all close, where we supported each other, where love was real and unconditional. But that family never existed. It was a story I told myself to make sense of the pain, to justify the sacrifices. The family I actually had, the one where I was valued only for what I could give, I don't miss that at all. I think about Mom sometimes, about that letter she left me. I think about how brave she was at the end, how she finally stood up for me, even though she was dying. I wish she'd done it sooner. I wish she'd said those things to my face, instead of in a letter I only got to read after she was gone. But I'm grateful for it anyway, for the validation, for the permission to walk away, for the proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining the way they treated me. Last month I got a card in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Catherine, I saw your Instagram. The cottage looks beautiful. You look happy. I'm sorry for everything. I know it's too late, but I needed you to know. I put the card in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe someday we'll try to rebuild something. But I'm not in a hurry. For now, I'm exactly where I need to be. In this house I chose, with this life I built, surrounded by people who see me, who value me, who would never dream of locking me out. I'm not someone's afterthought anymore. I'm not someone's backup plan. I'm not the woman in the kitchen watching life happen through a door. I'm the woman at the head of the table, the one pouring the wine, the one telling the stories. And I'm finally free.